Good evening. You're here to drift softly into another world where the flicker of candlelight dances against stone walls and whispers of the past echo in the dark. Tonight, I invite you to close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let your mind wander far away. But tell me, have you ever wondered what it felt like to be a woman in the Middle Ages? To wake up one morning and realize that your neighbors had decided you were a witch? Imagine the gentle creak of your wooden door at dawn, the smell of damp earth drifting into your one-room cottage. You rise slowly, your joints stiff from sleeping on straw. Outside, the village is already stirring. Clumsy chickens flapping about, the sharp scent of smoke from early hearth fires curling into the morning fog. You hear the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer and the faint chatter of women at the communal well. You don't own much, perhaps a single linen shift, a faded woolen cloak, and a handful of herbs hanging above your hearth, drying patiently. Those herbs, meant to soothe coughs or ease a restless baby, might be your undoing. In the medieval mind, everything had its place, its rigid order. God above, men below him, and women, well, somewhere near the goats, some would say, but definitely below the men. If a cow gave sour milk or a child fell ill, it wasn't long before fingers pointed at the woman with the sharp tongue or the woman who lived alone. Or maybe the woman whose garden bloomed a bit too brightly, as though touched by some invisible, dangerous magic. People craved explanations for every misfortune, and magic, that murky, terrifying possibility, offered the perfect scapegoat. And so suspicion festered like mold on old bread. You try to ignore the whispers. She talks to her cat too much. Or, I saw her wandering in the moonlight muttering to herself. You focus instead on mending your cloak by the fire. The rough wool biting at your fingers. You listen to the fire crackle, trying to steady your breath, but you can't help feeling the cold draft from the door, as though the outside world is already pushing its way in. There's a deep loneliness here, an isolation as vast as the fields beyond your village. You may have friends, but can you truly trust them? One slip of the tongue, one petty argument, and suddenly your name is whispered at church, and not in prayer. Tonight, as you prepare a thin broth of cabbage and barley, the smoke stings your eyes. You can't help but remember the stories of Agnes, dragged from her home at dawn, her gray hair yanked back as the priest read the accusations, or of Margarita, who was accused simply because she assisted a neighbor's difficult childbirth, an act so intimate and brave, yet so easily labeled as diabolical intervention. Your heart beats faster when you remember the smell of burning flesh that once drifted over the fields. They said it smelled like pork roasting, and yet no one ever looked comfortable while saying it. The church bells rang that day not in celebration, but an ominous, echoing rhythm. It's easy to see how it all begins. One bad harvest, one sudden death. A woman who knows a little too much about plants. A mother who heals fevers when she should only pray. They say the devil likes to visit in dreams, offering promises of freedom, power, or revenge. But you only dream of warmer blankets and thicker soup. By candlelight, you imagine what it might be like to live in a world without suspicion, without constant vigilance. But such thoughts are dangerous. They slip through your mind like a black cat darting across your doorstep at dusk. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the shutters. You pull your cloak tighter and glance at your cat, curled up near the hearth. Perhaps tomorrow, someone will see the two of you together and think you're conspiring with dark forces. The idea almost makes you laugh. Almost. In your mind, you wonder, if you were truly a witch, wouldn't your life be a little easier? Maybe your soup wouldn't be so watery, your bed so cold. Maybe you wouldn't feel the constant gnawing fear in your belly. A fear that tonight might be your last night of freedom. Tonight, as you lie there with your thin blanket pulled up to your chin, you try to listen for signs that everything is normal. The creak of the roof beams, the occasional scuttle of a mouse. You tell yourself these sounds are harmless, yet your mind drifts to the stories of inquisitors traveling from town to town, their heavy boots echoing in the church aisles, their breath smelling faintly of sour wine and stale bread. Outside, the village feels like it's holding its breath. You imagine the distant glow of lanterns, the heavy hush of conspiratorial meetings at the church steps, the subtle shuffle of neighbors exchanging secrets under moonlight. There's a coldness that creeps under the door, biting at your toes. It almost feels personal, as if the night itself is accusing you. You close your eyes and remember when life felt simpler, if it ever did. Perhaps before your husband died of a fever, before your daughter's cough turned to a rattle that no poultice or prayer could soothe. They whispered it was your fault. Maybe you didn't pray hard enough. Maybe God had turned his face from you. Or maybe, and this is the dangerous thought, there is no logic to suffering at all. In the morning, the air is heavy with the smell of damp hay and human sweat. You force yourself up, ignoring the aches in your back. You find your feet in the mud outside, cold and sticky, pulling at your thin shoes. A neighbor passes by, avoiding your gaze. You hear the words, bewitched, slip past her lips as if by accident, but words have sharp edges in a small village. The market square is a living tapestry of odors and sounds, the pungent scent of salted fish, the rough crackle of coarse wool being traded, the shrill squawk of chickens being dragged by their feet. You stand there, clutching your basket, trying to blend in, but you feel the eyes on your back. You glance at the priest's house with its thick stone walls and small glassless window. The priest, you know, holds power heavier than any sword. He interprets God's will for these people. If he says the devil walks among you, they believe him. And who better to embody that devil than a woman who knows how to make a fever tea or deliver a breech baby? A sudden clatter of a dropped pot makes you jump. Your heart thrums wildly, as if it might escape your ribs. You think of your daughter's small, cold hands. You think of the last meal you shared together. Thin porridge, a few shriveled onions. You think of how grief twisted your face into something the villagers did not recognize. A woman who grieves too much, who wails too loudly, who walks alone in the woods. What could be more suspicious? You hear the town crier shouting, "Heretics and witches among us!" His voice cracks in the cold air. You see children giggle as they mimic his words, their little hands flailing as if casting curses. The innocence in their laughter cuts deeper than any knife. You retreat home, the world pressing down on your shoulders like wet wool. You try to focus on your simple tasks, scrubbing your one clay pot, patching a tear in your cloak, but each small chore feels like a performance. One wrong move, one slip of the tongue, and they will come for you. Tonight, you light a tallow candle, its acrid scent filling the room. You watch its flame dance wildly in the draft, like a tiny spirit trying to escape. You whisper to yourself, a habit now, just to hear another voice. You list all the things you've done to be good. You helped the midwife. You shared onions with the neighbor whose husband drinks too much. You prayed until your knees turned purple. But here, goodness is as thin as your broth. It can evaporate in an instant, replaced by fear and collective hysteria. And yet, you wonder how a woman becomes so feared simply for knowing too much, for knowing when to plant marigolds to repel insects, or when to grind willow bark for a fever. You wonder if somewhere, beyond the hills, there is a place where knowledge is not a curse, but a gift. You hear a knock at the door, sudden, hard, echoing. Your heart stops. You imagine the inquisitor standing there with his cold, suspicious eyes, or the village man gripping torches, ready to drag you out into the night. Your breath catches in your throat. You wait. The knock doesn't come again. Perhaps it was just the wind or a loose shutter. You try to calm your racing thoughts. You wrap yourself tighter in your cloak and rock gently, a quiet rhythm to soothe your own fear. You whisper a prayer, not sure if anyone listens, not sure if you even believe anymore. As the candle burns lower, its fragile flame trembles in the dark, casting long, shivering shadows across the rough walls. You watch it like a tiny heartbeat, fragile and persistent. Outside, the wind sighs against the cottage, whispering secrets through the cracks. You curl your toes, pressing them into the straw mattress, as if trying to anchor yourself to something solid. Sleep teases you, pulling at your eyelids, but your mind refuses to rest. You think of the women who came before you, the midwives, the herb gatherers, the wise old crones with silver hair who sat at the edges of village life. You imagine their hands, rough and brown from working the earth, deftly crushing rosemary or slipping chamomile into a pot. These hands, so nurturing, became evidence of witchcraft in the eyes of frightened neighbors. In the morning, you forced yourself up to greet another day that already feels heavy on your shoulders. The air is sharp and smells of damp earth and smoke. You wrap your cloak tightly, feeling each step echoed through your bones. The village seems quieter than usual. People avoid your eyes, turning away as if your gaze might scorch them. At the communal well, you try to draw water. The rope creaks and groans as you pull the heavy bucket up. You can feel the eyes behind you, sharp, accusing. A young boy whispers to his mother, "That's her, the one with the black cat." The mother shushes him harshly, but her eyes confirm the suspicion. The water splashes over your hands, cold as river stones, biting your skin. You take a moment to look at your reflection in the surface, a ghostly face framed by a rough hood. You barely recognize yourself anymore. Lines have carved themselves around your eyes, not just from age, but from constant worry and watching. You think of bread. You haven't tasted proper bread in weeks. The last loaf was mostly husk and mold, each bite sticking to your throat. You remember the villagers feasting on festival days, honey cakes, roasted meats, rich pottage. But now even they tighten their belts, blaming the bad harvest on witches rather than poor soil and endless rain. Your stomach growls, echoing the hollow feeling that never seems to leave. You recall the smell of roasted goose from years ago, when your husband was alive and work was just hard, not impossible. You remember how he laughed with his mouth full, crumbs stuck in his beard. Now even his memory feels dangerous, another tie to a life that has slipped away. As you trudge back home, you pass a small shrine with a wooden carving of the Virgin Mary. You stop and kneel, though your knees ache terribly. You mouth a prayer, partly for forgiveness, partly for protection. You feel the mud seeping into your skirts, chilling your bones. But you stay, as if the longer you kneel, the safer you'll be. When you finally rise, your fingers are stiff, and your face is streaked with tears you didn't know were falling. You walk past children playing with sticks, their laughter suddenly falling silent as you approach. One girl holds up a makeshift cross, her eyes wide and afraid. You give her a small, sad nod, as if to say, "I understand your fear, little one." At home, you find your cat perched on the hearth, watching you with those ancient, knowing eyes. You stroke its fur, feeling the comforting vibration of its purr. In this small creature, you find your only real warmth. That night, you prepare a meager dinner, thin cabbage broth, a few stale root vegetables. The smell is bitter, almost medicinal. You sip it slowly, each mouthful a reminder of how little you have left. You chew on a piece of carrot, imagining it to be a piece of sweet apple, but the illusion fades quickly. You think about the punishment for witchcraft, torture, confessions forced by unbearable pain, and public executions meant to purify the village. You've heard about the ducking stools, where women were plunged into icy water. If they floated, they were witches. If they sunk, they were innocent, and often dead. You shiver at the absurdity. No matter what you do, your fate feels pre-written, sewn into the seams of your cloak like an invisible curse. You close your eyes, letting your head rest against the cold wooden wall, imagining yourself somewhere else, perhaps a meadow filled with wildflowers, the sun warm on your skin, no watchful eyes or accusing tongues. But the reality is as thin as your broth. You are here, in this damp, smoky room, with your pat and your prayers that seem to vanish into the cracks of the ceiling. You whisper to yourself, maybe tomorrow they'll forget. Maybe tomorrow I'll just be a widow again, not a witch. But you know the answer in your bones. You drift between waking and sleep, your thoughts weaving into each other like threads in an old tapestry. In the half-light of dawn, you hear a rooster crow, sharp and triumphant, as though announcing not a new day, but a new judgment. You sit up slowly, feeling the straw mattress cling to your back. Your joints complain, and your head throbs with the dull ache of another restless night. You notice the frost on the inside of your window, delicate white veins creeping across the glass like tiny ghostly fingers. You run a finger over them, and they melt at your touch, leaving a cold, wet trail. Outside, you hear the steady thump of an axe splitting wood, the harsh crack echoing down the village lane. You wonder if they're preparing more than just firewood, perhaps a stake for someone's punishment. Your imagination is a cruel companion, always eager to show you horrors before breakfast. You force yourself to move. You stoke the embers of the hearth, the smoke biting at your eyes. Your cat stretches and yawns, indifferent to your fears. You drop a few shriveled turnips into the pot, the water cloudy and thin. You sigh at the smell, earthy, almost sour, but better than nothing. Suddenly, you hear shouting outside, male voices, rough and urgent. You freeze, your hand hovering over the pot. You strain to hear. The words blur into a single heavy wave of noise. Then a sudden pounding on your door. Your heart leaps to your throat. You open the door a crack. A group of men stands there, their breath steaming in the morning air. You recognize them all. Neighbors you once shared bread with. Men who once laughed at your husband's silly stories. Now, their faces are drawn tight, eyes glinting with fear, and something else. Relief, perhaps, that it isn't them. The tallest man, Peter the miller, steps forward. His voice trembles as he says, "We need to question you. The priest says you've been seen walking at night, speaking to spirits." You open your mouth to protest, but your voice catches. Spirits? You were gathering herbs in the moonlight, trying to find something to ease your endless cough. You shake your head, but they don't seem to see you anymore, only the shape of their own fears projected onto your skin. They push past you, the cold air rushing in. Your cat bolts under the bed. You stand there shaking as they rummage through your small possessions. The dried herbs, the small bundles of linen, the few bits of stale bread. Peter holds up a sprig of rosemary as if it were a dagger.
"Proof," he says, his voice a harsh whisper. "This is witches' work." Your knees weaken. You drop to the floor, your palms scraping against the rough wood. You feel your breath rush out in short, desperate gasps. One man grabs your arm, pulling you to your feet. His grip is like iron, the smell of sweat and wet wool filling your nose. They drag you into the street. The village gathers quickly, drawn by the noise, like crows to a carcass. You see familiar faces, the old woman you once helped during a hard winter, the boy you gave apples to last summer. Their eyes slide away, as if they can't bear to watch, or perhaps they enjoy watching too much. The priest arrives, his heavy robe sweeping the mud. His face is set in a grave mask of righteousness. He raises a hand, and the murmurs hush. He accuses you loudly, reciting every small act twisted into evidence. The herbs, the cat, your solitary walks, your daughter's death. You try to speak, but your words dissolve into the cold morning air. A sudden, sharp laughter pierces the silence. You turn and see a girl, no more than 10, giggling behind her mother's skirts. The sound cuts through you, crueler than any whip. The priest declares that you will be held for questioning, a word that means torment in this place, though no one says it out loud. Your wrists are bound, the rope biting into your skin. You taste blood where you bit your lip, trying not to cry out. They lead you to a small stone building near the church. Inside, it is damp and smells of mildew and fear. You are pushed into a corner, your back pressing into the cold stone. The door slams shut. In the dark, you hear only your ragged breathing and the distant bell tolling for morning prayers. You close your eyes and imagine your daughter's laughter, the warmth of her small hand in yours. You think of the meadow beyond the village where wild violets grow in spring. You think of freedom as something you might touch only in dreams now. Tonight, you may not sleep, or perhaps you will, and in your dream, you will be somewhere far from here, somewhere with bright sun, gentle hands, and no ropes or glares. You lean your head against the wall and whisper to yourself, a prayer, a wish, or perhaps just the last flicker of hope. Let them see me as human, just for a moment.
You sit in the corner of the cold stone room, your head resting against the damp wall. Every breath feels like it echoes in this hollow space. Each exhale a small ghost that hovers and disappears into the darkness. Your wrists throb where the ropes pressed into them, the skin already raw and tender. A single narrow window lets in a sliver of gray morning light. You watch dust motes dance lazily in the beam, tiny worlds swirling as if nothing at all were wrong. You imagine the warmth of the sun beyond that narrow crack, the golden glow on your face, the gentle kiss of a breeze. You shiver. Your cloak was left behind, and the chill of the stone seeps into your bones. You try to hug your knees to your chest, curling in on yourself like a scared animal. You hear a rat scuttle somewhere behind you, its nails scratching softly on the stones. Even the rat seems to have more freedom than you do now. You remember a day when you were young, running barefoot through the meadow beyond the village. The grass was high, brushing against your legs, and the air smelled of wild thyme and fresh earth. You felt light then, almost as if you could lift off the ground and fly above the treetops. That memory feels like it belongs to someone else now, a different life, a different world. The door creaks open. A sliver of light stretches across the floor, revealing the priest standing there, his silhouette sharp and severe. He steps inside, his boots echoing with each measured step. He looks at you as though examining a dead bird, tilting his head slightly. He holds a small wooden cross close to his chest, as if to guard himself from whatever evil he believes you carry. He asks you to confess. The word rings in the room like a hammer striking an anvil. Confess to consorting with the devil. Confess to cursing the fields, to poisoning the minds of children,
to dancing under the moon with demons. You try to answer, but your voice is weak and cracked from thirst and fear. You whisper, "I am only a woman. I only know herbs. I only tried to help." But your words float past him, unheard or unwanted. The priest's face twists, as if he is disappointed by your stubbornness, or perhaps relieved that he now has reason to proceed with harsher measures.
He leaves, and two men enter. They don't look at you directly. One carries a bucket of water, the other a bundle of ropes. You know what these tools are meant for. You feel your stomach turn to ice. You brace yourself, fingers gripping your skirt, knuckles white. But in this room, there is no escape, not for your body, and certainly not for your mind. You hear the water splash as it's poured into a trough. The ropes creak as they are uncoiled. You feel each sound as if it pierces your skin. Your mind drifts again, out of desperation. You think of your daughter's small hand slipping into yours on a festival day, the warmth of her trust. You think of the taste of fresh honeycomb, stolen from a hive long ago, sticky and impossibly sweet on your tongue. You think of the times you knelt at the river to wash your hair, the water so cold it made your scalp tingle, and you would laugh despite the sting. You hold on to these moments like talismans. The men step closer. You squeeze your eyes shut. The world narrows to your heartbeat, thudding painfully in your chest, and the sudden warmth of tears sliding down your face. After what feels like hours, they leave. Your body is left trembling, your mind frayed like an old woolen shawl. You feel as if your spirit has slipped just beyond your reach, hovering somewhere in the corner of the room, watching silently. In the heavy silence, you imagine the villagers going about their day outside, women trading onions and stale bread, children running through the mud, a blacksmith hammering out horseshoes. Life continues, indifferent to the small tragedy behind these walls. You whisper to the ceiling, to the cold stones, to anyone who might listen. Why must survival cost so much? You think of all the other women before you, those who vanished into the forest rather than face this fate, those who stood in the square with flames licking at their skirts, those who whispered final blessings for the children they would never hold again. You are not alone in your suffering, and yet in this moment, it feels like you are the last person in the world. As dusk falls, you curl up on the floor, the stones unyielding beneath you. You feel each rib pressing against the cold, each shallow breath a struggle. You try to imagine tomorrow, but the thought flickers and dies, like a candle in the wind. The night creeps into the small stone room like a living thing, curling into every corner, pressing against your skin. You try to focus on the tiny sounds, the drip of water from somewhere above, the rustle of straw under your aching limbs, the distant clanging of a church bell marking the evening prayers. You wonder if anyone prays for you. You curl tighter, pressing your forehead against your knees. Your fingers are stiff, your lips cracked and dry. You feel your stomach tighten again, a quiet, constant ache that has become its own rhythm. Hunger is an old companion now, whispering in the dark, reminding you of all the warmth you have lost. You remember the scent of freshly baked rye bread, the way the crust would crack under your teeth. You think of warm milk, heavy with cream, sipped in the early dawn before the cows were taken to pasture. These memories float through your mind like fireflies, small, glowing comforts that are gone the moment you try to hold them. Suddenly, the door creaks open. The same two men enter, their faces set in grim lines. You see no kindness there, only duty, or perhaps fear masquerading as duty. One holds a lantern, its weak flame flickering against the walls, throwing long, twitching shadows that seem almost alive. They tell you it is time to face the village. You don't resist. Your strength is a hollow echo now. They bind your wrists again, the rough rope digging into tender scabs. You try to steady your breathing, but each inhale feels like swallowing stones. They lead you outside into the cold night. The sky above is a dark velvet, scattered with pale stars that watch silently. The moon hangs low and swollen, like a milky eye peering down at your small, fragile figure. The village square is filled with people, their faces lit by torches. The orange glow flickers across their expressions: fear, disgust, excitement. A strange hunger lives in their eyes, a collective relief that it is you, not them. The priest stands on a wooden platform, robes billowing slightly in the breeze. His voice booms across the square, a practiced cadence that has the force of scripture. He accuses you again. Witchcraft, heresy, unnatural knowledge. He lifts the cross high above his head, as though shielding himself from a storm only he can see. You try to meet his gaze, but he looks through you as if you are already gone, a ghost fading into the smoke. Someone throws a clump of mud. It hits your shoulder, splattering cold against your skin. Another follows. You hear a woman curse your name, spitting the words as if expelling poison.
You close your eyes, trying to float away from your body. You imagine yourself in a sunlit field, flowers nodding in the breeze, bees humming a gentle lullaby. You imagine warm hands on your shoulders, soft voices calling you home. But each shout drags you back. Each stone that strikes your feet, each cruel word tethers you to this night. They read out your crimes, your knowledge of herbs, your long walks at night, your cat, your very survival as a widow. Each detail twisted into a dark story, each act of care turned into an accusation. You hear your own life echo back at you in grotesque fragments, as if you are a character in a tale spun by a fevered mind. You glance at the villagers, the young mother you once helped when her milk wouldn't come, the old man whose aching joints you soothed with poultices. They avert their eyes. You see one woman cross herself, lips moving silently, her face pale. A small child tugs at her sleeve, asking questions she cannot answer. You watch the mother pull the child closer, shielding her eyes as if from a foul wind. The priest raises his hand. Silence falls over the crowd like a thick blanket. Your heart hammers in your chest, so loud you think they must all hear it. You are told you will be taken to the edge of the village at first light. They will decide then whether to burn you or to cast you into the river,
to see if you float. You almost laugh at the cruelty of the choice. Death by flame or water. Two impossible doors, both leading to the same silent corridor. You feel the ropes tighten as they drag you back to the small cell. You stumble, your knees scraping against the ground, mud seeping into the cuts. Your head swims. You taste blood and earth together on your tongue. Back in the cell, they shove you into the corner and slam the door. The echo bounces around like a cruel drumbeat. You collapse, trembling, your breath coming in short, sharp bursts. You close your eyes and whisper a prayer, not to be saved, but to be remembered. You ask the night to hold your story, to carry it beyond the walls, beyond the torches, beyond the moon. You think of your daughter's laughter, your husband's gentle hands, your own voice singing softly over boiling herbs. You think of all the small kindnesses that will disappear with you.
As the cell door slams shut behind you, the echoes seem to linger longer than they should, curling around your ribs like icy fingers. You slide down to the floor, your back pressed against the rough stones, your breathing shallow and ragged. In the dark, you listen to the quiet, the hush so complete it feels like a blanket draped over your mind. Your thoughts flicker like dying embers, sometimes flaring bright with memories, sometimes sinking into a heavy ash. You think of the stream that runs just beyond the fields. In the spring, it overflows, turning the meadows into glassy mirrors where geese glide and children splash in their ragged tunics. You remember cupping water in your hands, cool and sweet, splashing it over your face during harvest days when sweat and dust clung to your skin. That water feels like a distant dream now, a kindness from another life. Your stomach clenches again, a gnawing emptiness that refuses to let go. You remember the taste of warm goat's milk on a cold morning, the sharp bite of wild apples, the soft, buttery crumb of festival cakes. Hunger sharpens every memory until it shines like a blade. You shift your weight, wincing as your wrists throb. The rope burns feel like brands, each pulse reminding you that you are still here, still waiting for the dawn that might end everything. You wonder if the villagers sleep easily tonight, tucked under coarse wool blankets, bellies full of pottage and rye bread. Do they dream of angels and saints? Or do they see your face, pale and shivering, flickering at the edges of their candlelight? You think of the children, their small hands sticky with honey, their eyes wide with questions they don't yet know how to ask. You imagine them learning to fear women like you, women who know too much, who speak too softly or too boldly, who dare to live without permission. You want to reach through the years and tell them, it's not the knowing that is dangerous. It's the fear of your knowing that destroys us. In the darkness, you trace small circles on the floor with your fingertip, a quiet ritual to keep your mind from unraveling. You count your breaths, whispering the names of herbs as if they are old friends. Mugwort, comfrey, yarrow, sage. Each name is a small lantern in your mind, flickering but warm.
Hours pass, or maybe just minutes. Time has become a slow, aching tide. You drift in and out of half sleep, your dreams punctuated by sharp jabs of pain and sudden jolts of memory. Finally, you hear movement outside, the scrape of boots on stone, the murmur of hushed voices. The smell of tallow and damp wool drifts under the door. The sky beyond the narrow window has turned a pale gray, that soft, bruised light that precedes dawn. The door opens again. Two men enter, their faces somber. One carries a rope, the other a lantern. They avoid your eyes as if you might cast some silent curse through a single glance. They pull you up roughly, your legs buckle, and for a moment the world spins, your vision swimming in and out like the slow ebb of a tide. They steady you, but not out of kindness, just to keep the spectacle moving. Outside, the air is sharp, filled with the earthy smell of wet straw and ash. The village gathers in a slow, reluctant wave. Torches flare against the gray dawn, casting orange halos onto weary, anxious faces. They lead you to the edge of the village, to the river that cuts through the low fields. You can hear its gurgling, a gentle, mocking lullaby. The water glints in the new light, serene and cold, utterly indifferent. The priest stands on the bank, robes trailing in the mud. He lifts his hands, reciting prayers that sting your ears. You hear the words purify, cleanse, redeem. Each one lands like a stone on your chest. They bind your wrists and ankles with fresh rope, rough and biting. You feel every fiber, each twist and knot as though it is being wound directly around your heart. You glance at the villagers, hoping for one kind face. You find none, only a sea of blank stares, some fearful, some almost eager. A few avert their eyes, gripping their children's hands tightly. You hear a soft sob from somewhere near the back. You imagine it is the old woman you once helped when her fever nearly took her. Or perhaps the mother whose baby you coaxed into the world on a freezing night. But no one steps forward. No one says your name. The priest finishes his chant. Two men step forward and lift you by the arms. You feel your feet leave the ground, the sky reeling above you. The river below gleams like a blade. In that final moment before the water closes over you, you take one last breath, deep and trembling. You fill your lungs with the smell of mud and torch smoke, the salt of your tears. You think, let them remember me as more than this.
The water swallows you in an instant, a cold, shocking embrace that steals the breath from your lungs and roars in your ears like 1,000 distant storms. The river feels alive, a creature with icy fingers wrapping around your ankles, tugging you deeper into its silent world. For a heartbeat, you float between two realms. The village above is a blur of torchlight and shouts, the surface shivering like a sheet of glass. Below, everything is muffled and endless, a greenish twilight that pulls at your hair and wraps your skirts around your legs like weeds. You kick and writhe, your wrists straining painfully against the ropes. Bubbles escape from your mouth in frantic bursts, each one shimmering up toward the thin slice of sky above. You think you see a flash of your daughter's face in those bubbles, her small, solemn eyes, her chapped lips whispering your name. Your lungs burn, a sharp, searing pain that blossoms into something almost luminous. In the dark water, your mind flickers through every small kindness you ever offered. The girl whose scraped knees you washed with yarrow tea. The young mother you comforted as she sobbed into your lap. The lonely old man to whom you gave rosemary for his memory. You remember each herb by touch, soft sage leaves, the brittle snap of dried lavender stems, the peppery tickle of thyme. You can almost smell them, their gentle fragrances wrapping around you like a warm cloak, a final comfort as your strength ebbs away. Above you, distorted shapes gather at the riverbank, villagers leaning forward, craning their necks to see if you will float or sink. To them, your body in the water is not a woman they once greeted at market or shared a harvest prayer with. It has become an answer to their fear, a symbol to cleanse their conscience. The priest stands with arms crossed over his chest, his lips moving in silent prayer, or perhaps judgment. You cannot hear his words, only the rushing pulse of the river in your head. Your body grows heavy. The cold seeps into your bones until you feel as though you are turning to stone, each limb weighed down by sorrow and mud. You let your eyes drift shut, the darkness inside more inviting than the trembling light above. A final memory surfaces. Your husband's laughter, rough and warm, echoing through the fields as he scythed the tall grasses. You remember him wiping sweat from his brow, his hand reaching for yours with simple tenderness. You hold on to that warmth, letting it bloom in your chest, even as the river presses closer.
Suddenly, your body jerks. Strong hands pull at you, drag you back toward the surface. Your mouth opens in a raw gasp, water and air mingling in a painful, choking surge. You collapse onto the riverbank, coughing violently, your body shuddering with each breath. Mud clings to your hair and face, your limbs trembling like a newborn foal. Around you, a hush falls over the crowd. You hear whispers. She sank. She must be innocent. But the relief is shallow and uneasy. You can feel their eyes on you, still filled with suspicion. Innocence in this world is as thin as a reed in the wind. A woman steps forward with a blanket, her hands shaking as she drapes it over your shoulders. You glance up and see her face, the midwife you once helped during her long, harrowing labor. Her eyes shine with unshed tears, but her mouth is set in a tight line of fear. The priest approaches, his face pale as though he has seen a ghost. He pronounces your innocence aloud, but his voice is strained, unwilling. You know the words are a fragile shield, one that might crumble with a single harsh wind or another lost harvest. They leave you there, shivering on the bank, your soaked dress clinging to your skin like a second, colder soul. One by one, the villagers turn away, retreating into the dawn mist, their torches bobbing like distant stars. You stay still for a long time, feeling the tremor of each heartbeat echo through your ribs. You touch the muddy ground beneath your fingers, grounding yourself in its rough solidity. You are alive, but at what cost?
Your body aches with 1,000 small wounds. The rope burns, the bruises, the chill that gnaws at your bones. But your spirit, though battered, flickers stubbornly in the dark. You are not gone yet. You imagine your daughter standing at the river's edge, her small hands outstretched, calling you home. You whisper her name, a soft promise to keep going, to carry her memory like a lantern through the darkest nights. You look to the horizon, where the sky has begun to pale with the weak, hesitant light of morning. It does not feel like hope yet, more like a question, an invitation to arise despite everything. You draw a slow, ragged breath, tasting the wet earth and the faint sweetness of distant meadows. Somewhere a bird calls, tentative and lonely. You close your eyes and lean into that sound, holding it close like a secret prayer.
The first warmth of dawn touches your face like a shy hand, hesitant and fragile. You open your eyes, blinking against the pale light. The blanket around your shoulders is heavy with water, the wool clinging to your skin in damp folds. You shift slowly, each movement awakening new aches, each breath a careful negotiation with pain. The river murmurs beside you, as if nothing has happened. Its surface glints softly, carrying reeds and broken twigs downstream. You listen to it, letting the gentle current fill the silence left by the villagers' departure. You try to stand. Your legs tremble violently, but you press your palms into the mud, forcing yourself upward inch by inch. You sway, lightheaded, your vision swimming with spots. For a moment, you think you might collapse again, but you breathe deeply, tasting the cold air and the iron tang of your own blood in your mouth. You look down at your reflection in the river. Your hair is matted with mud and tangled weeds. Your cheeks have hollow and bruised, your eyes wide and too bright. You barely recognize the woman staring back. She seems like a ghost risen from the water, half real, half lost. Around you, the morning begins to stir. Birds call hesitantly from the trees, their thin notes threading through the mist. Somewhere in the village, a dog barks and a door creaks open. The world, in its indifferent way, continues turning. You wrap the blanket tighter and take a step toward the village. Each footfall feels as though you're walking on splinters. You imagine the villagers inside their cottages, peeking through cracks and shutters, whispering into each other's ears. Some may feel relief. Some may feel disappointment that the show ended without a final flame or a floating corpse. As you pass the church, you see the priest standing at the doorway, his hands clasped tightly as if in prayer. He watches you with an expression you can't decipher, part fear, part guilt, part something softer that he quickly hides behind his lowered eyes. You feel no warmth toward him, no forgiveness, but also no rage. You are too tired, too hollow for anger. Further on, you pass the well where women gather each morning. Today, they stand apart, avoiding your gaze. You hear them muttering, their words slipping into the mist like secrets. She came back. The witch lives. God must have spared her for a reason,
A little girl stands nearby, clutching a doll made of straw and scraps of cloth. She stares at you with wide, unblinking eyes. You offer her a small, trembling smile. Slowly, she raises her hand, as if to wave, but her mother snatches her back sharply, pulling her behind her skirts. You feel a sudden, sharp loneliness bloom inside you, a cold flower opening its petals deep in your chest. You keep moving. When you reach your cottage, you pause at the threshold. The door hangs slightly open, the wood scarred from rough hands. You step inside. The smell of smoke and dried herbs greet you like old friends, though everything feels slightly off, as if someone has shifted the world a few inches to the side. Your cat emerges from beneath the bed, stretching and yawning, blinking at you with golden eyes. You kneel, and it pads over, nuzzling your cheek. The warmth of its fur against your skin makes your throat tighten. You bury your face in its neck, breathing in that earthy, familiar scent, and let yourself cry, the sound low and cracked like a broken bell. When the sobs subside, you sit by the hearth and pull the blanket tighter. You reach for the small bundle of herbs hanging above you. With trembling fingers, you crush a sprig of sage, bringing it to your nose. The scent is sharp, green, alive, a whisper from the earth that you are still here. You think of the women who will come to your door again someday, timid and cautious, seeking teas for their fevers or salves for their sores. You think of the children who will grow up hearing your story, twisted into legend, half warning, half wonder. You imagine your daughter beside you now, her small fingers stirring a pot of broth, her soft voice humming a tune you can't quite remember. You hold that image close, a secret hearth inside your heart. Outside, the morning deepens into a gray, steady light. Smoke curls from distant chimneys, and you hear the low hum of life resuming. A rooster crowing, a door slamming, footsteps on wet earth. You pull your cloak tighter and close your eyes. You are not free, not truly. The villager's suspicion will follow you like a shadow, waiting to bloom again in the next bad season, the next sudden death. But you have your breath, your herbs, your cat. You have the thin, stubborn thread of your own being, refusing to snap. In that quiet, you make a small vow to continue, if only because the earth still offers its roots and leaves. If only because you can still feel the cat's purr beneath your palm. If only because your daughter's memory deserves more than silence.
You remain by the hearth, listening to the small, ordinary sounds around you. The cat's steady purr, the gentle crackle of a few stubborn embers, the sigh of wind slipping through the cracks in the walls. Each sound feels like an anchor, pulling you back into your body after so many hours drifting in fear and cold. You reach for a small clay cup on the shelf. Your fingers tremble, and it nearly slips. You steady it against your palm, feeling the familiar, rough texture beneath your thumb. You fill it with a little water, stale but still precious. You sip slowly, each drop echoing in your empty stomach like a stone tossed into a well. Outside, the village continues its slow dance of chores and murmured gossip. You hear the rhythmic thunk of an axe splitting wood, the creak of a cart rolling down the muddy lane,
the distant bleating of goats. Life insists on moving forward, even when yours feels stuck at the edge of the river. You look around your small room, noticing the little things. The basket you wove years ago, now patched and frayed. The simple wooden spoon your husband carved on a long winter night. The woven mat where your daughter once played with scraps of fabric and pebbles. Each object glows with a quiet history, 1,000 silent moments woven into their worn edges. You run your fingers along the herbs above: thyme, sage, lavender, mugwort. You remember gathering them under the full moon, your skirts soaked with dew, the cold bite of night air against your cheeks. You remember the joy of finding a rare sprig of wild mint by the river, its bright scent like a small miracle. You close your eyes and breathe in the mingled fragrances. They swirl around you like a memory of better seasons, a gentle chorus reminding you that you are more than the village's fear. A sudden knock at the door startles you. Your heart leaps to your throat. You clutch the blanket tighter and force yourself to stand, your knees weak and uncertain. At the door stands the midwife, the one who once wept in your arms when her baby struggled to take its first breath. Her face is pale and drawn, her hands twisting a scrap of linen as if trying to wring out her own nerves. She asks softly, I came to see if you were alive." You nod, unable to form words at first. Your throat feels thick with all the unsaid things. Finally, you manage a small, hoarse whisper. "I am."
She steps inside hesitantly, her eyes darting to the herbs, the hearth, the cat now curled like a dark loaf of bread near the fire. She stands awkwardly, as though afraid to touch anything, afraid to breathe too deeply. "I brought you this," she says, holding out a small bundle. You take it carefully. Inside is a rough piece of bread, an onion, and a few wilted greens. It isn't much, but it feels like a feast. Your eyes sting with sudden tears. "Thank you," you say, the words tasting strange and new on your tongue. She nods, her gaze lowering to the floor. A long silence stretches between you, heavy but not unfriendly. It is the silence of shared suffering, of two women who have felt the sharp edge of the world's judgment. She shifts her weight, glancing once more at the door. They say you're innocent now," she murmurs, though her voice holds no conviction. But you know how they are." You do. You know they will watch you more closely than ever. Listen for every whisper. Search for every reason to shift their fear back onto your shoulders. Innocence in the village is like frost in spring, fleeting, fragile, easily melted away by the next unlucky morning. The midwife steps forward and hesitantly touches your arm. Her fingers are rough and warm. That small human contact feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. You squeeze her hand lightly, and she gives you a quick, sad smile before slipping out the door, disappearing into the gray morning. You stand there for a while, holding the bundle of food against your chest, as if it might steady your heartbeat. You feel the warmth of the bread through the linen, a quiet pulse of kindness in the world that has so often turned its back on you. When you finally sit down again by the hearth, you tear off a piece of bread and chew slowly. Each bite feels like reclaiming a piece of yourself. Each swallow a quiet defiance against the hunger that tried to consume more than just your body. You look at the cat, now watching you with half-closed eyes. "We're still here," you murmur to it. Your voice is stronger than before, though still threaded with exhaustion. Outside, the first rays of true sunlight slip across the fields, turning the mud into ribbons of gold. You close your eyes and let that warmth wash over your face. It is a fragile promise, but for now, it is enough. You finish the bread slowly, each bite filling the hollow places inside you, both in your body and in your spirit. The onion is sharp, making your eyes water, but even that sting feels like a reminder that you are alive. You chew thoughtfully, listening to the small rustling of the cat as it circles and settles again near your feet. After so many days of fear and cold, the warmth from the hearth feels like an old friend pressing a comforting hand to your back. You run your fingers along the edge of your blanket, feeling each frayed thread. It has been mended so many times that it feels more patch than cloth, yet it holds you together all the same. Outside, the village continues to stir. You hear the muffled voices of women calling to children, the bleating of goats being led to pasture, the rhythmic knock of a hammer from the smithy. Life insists on its slow, stubborn routine, indifferent to the wounds you carry. You stand and shuffle to the small wooden chest near your bed. Inside are your most precious things: a scrap of your daughter's dress, a small carved comb, a tiny cloth doll she once slept pressed to her cheek. You lift each piece carefully, as though they might crumble under your fingers. You hold them to your chest, feeling your heartbeat echo against the soft fabric. For a moment, you let yourself imagine a different life, one where your daughter is still here, singing as she braids your hair. One where your husband returns from the fields each evening, his hands full of wildflowers or fresh eggs. A life where the villagers nod and smile instead of turning away in fear. But you open your eyes and see only the dim, smoky room, the herbs drooping in the warm air, the muddy footprints left on the floor from your trembling return. You sigh and set the keepsakes gently back into the chest, as if tucking them into a bed. You close the lid and press your hand to the wood, whispering a silent promise to keep going if only for their memory. Later, you step outside. The sun is higher now, its warmth soft but insistent against your chilled skin. You stand in the doorway for a moment, breathing in the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. The wind lifts the edge of your hair, brushing it across your face like a gentle caress. The path in front of your house is rutted with cart tracks and scattered straw. A few villagers pass by, keeping their distance. Some glance at you quickly, then look away. Others stare openly, eyes wide and uncertain, as if seeing a ghost. An old man pauses, leaning heavily on his stick. His eyes meet yours, pale and clouded by age. For a moment, neither of you moves. Then he raises one gnarled hand and gives a slow, trembling nod. You return it, feeling the smallest flicker of warmth. He shuffles on, disappearing into the thin morning mist. Near the edge of your garden, you see a patch of wild mint pushing up bravely through the muddy ground. You kneel slowly, knees cracking, and run your fingers over the bright green leaves. The sharp, cool scent rises immediately, clear and defiant. You close your eyes and breathe it in, feeling it seep into every tired corner of your mind. You carefully pluck a few sprigs and carry them inside. You set a small pot of water on the hearth, watching it as it slowly begins to steam, each bubble rising with a small sigh. You drop the mint in and inhale the rising fragrance, a simple, earthy balm against the dark tangle of recent days. As you sip the mint water, you feel it spread through your chest like a small flame, gentle and warming. You lean back, cradling the cup between your hands, and let your gaze wander to the doorway, where the sunlight pools on the floor in a pale golden puddle. You think about how easily a life can be unmade, how quickly a woman can shift from healer to heretic, from neighbor to monster. But in this small, steaming cup, you find the sliver of power that is yours alone. You remember that the knowledge in your hands, the herbs, the salves, the old remedies, was never truly about magic. It was about care, about survival, about the stubborn hope that a few leaves or a whispered word could tip the balance back toward life. You take another slow sip and feel the tension in your shoulders begin to melt, just a little. You look at your cat, now sprawled in a warm patch of light, its paws twitching in a quiet dream. And you think, maybe tomorrow you will tend to the small patch of herbs again. Maybe you will mend the torn hem of your cloak. Maybe you will even find the courage to greet a neighbor, to reclaim a tiny piece of the world that tried so hard to spit you out. For now, though, you're here, breathing, warm, still you. The morning drifts onward, slow and heavy as honey, each moment stretching long and tender around you. You sit by the hearth, the warm clay cup cradled in your palms, the mint tea still sending up delicate spirals of fragrant steam. You trace your thumb around the rim of the cup, feeling the small chips along the edge, reminders of all the mornings and evenings it has weathered beside you. Each imperfection feels like a quiet testament to your own endurance, a record of every slip and fall and careful repair. The cat stirs and rises, stretching its back into an elegant arch before padding across the floor. It circles your feet, its soft fur brushing your ankles like a whispered blessing. You lean down and stroke its head, listening to the rhythmic rumble of its purr, the closest sound to a lullaby you've known in years. Outside, the village continues its cautious dance. You hear the sharp clatter of a bucket dropped by the well, the low murmur of women exchanging news and fears in cautious voices. You imagine the stories they are already telling, stories in which your name has become a talisman of warning, a half-truth twisted to suit the needs of frightened hearts. You sigh and stand, your bones clicking in protest. You move to a small table by the window, where a cracked wooden bowl holds the last of your dried roots and wilted leaves. You lift each one gently, assessing their remaining strength. Some crumble at your touch, returning to dust as if they too have grown weary of this world. Others still hold a faint aroma, a stubborn whisper of green life. You set aside the usable pieces, arranging them in careful rows. Your fingers move on their own, guided by years of practice, by memories of your mother's hands moving in just the same way. You remember her humming softly,
her voice blending with the creak of the old floorboards and the low hiss of boiling water. For a moment, you close your eyes and hear her song, a simple tune without words, a melody that carried more comfort than any prayer. You sway slightly, letting it fill the small room like sunlight. When you open your eyes again, you notice a small spider weaving a web in the corner of the window. Its tiny legs dance with patient purpose, each thread laid carefully, each movement certain despite the fragility of its work. You watch it for a while, marveling at its quiet devotion to its craft. You think how similar your own hands are, weaving, mending, mixing, always working to hold the fragile pieces of life together.
A sudden knock startles you, the sound sharp against the gentle hush of your morning. Your fingers tense around a piece of dried root. You take a slow breath, steadying the thrum of your heart. You move to the door and open it just a crack. Outside stands a young woman, her cloak too thin for the lingering chill of early spring. Her eyes are wide and red-rimmed, her hands twisting the edge of her sleeve. "Please," she whispers, her voice quivering like a candle flame. "My baby, he won't stop crying. He's burning with fever. They said you might know what to do." You study her face, the fear, the exhaustion, the desperate hope balanced on the edge of her words. Slowly, you open the door wider and nod. "Come in," you say, your voice rough but steady. "Let me see what I can do." She steps inside, clutching a small bundle wrapped in linen. You guide her to the hearth, help her settle on the low stool. She unwraps the baby carefully, revealing a tiny face flushed and damp with sweat. The child's eyes flicker weakly, his small hands grasping at the air. You lean forward, your own hands moving instinctively, touching the baby's forehead, checking the pulse at his tiny wrist, listening to the strained rasp of each shallow breath. You feel the mother's gaze on you, wide and pleading, as if every thread of her world depends on your next move. You gather a small handful of feverfew and willow bark, grinding them with a smooth stone until their sharp, clean scent rises like a forest after rain. You pour water into a small pot and set it near the fire, stirring slowly as the herbs steep. The room fills with a soft, earthy fragrance, wrapping around you like a protective cloak. As you work, you speak softly to the mother, not of devils or curses, but of warmth, patience, and breath. You tell her to sink to the baby, to hold him close, to imagine each note of her voice weaving a net strong enough to keep him tethered to this world. When the tea is ready, you guide the mother's trembling hand, helping her offer small sips to the baby. You watch each drop disappear between his lips, each shallow swallow a small victory. In that quiet moment, you feel the room shift, not in the eyes of the village, but in your own heart. You remember who you are beneath all their fear, a woman who listens to the earth, who cradles life in her hands, who keeps watch in the night when others turn away. The young mother holds her baby tightly against her chest, rocking him gently as she hums a shaky lullaby. You watch her, feeling the rhythm of her worry fill the small room like a second heartbeat. The baby's eyelids flutter, each slow blink a delicate struggle between this world and the next. You continue to prepare small doses of the herbal tea, guiding her hands each time. With every cautious sip, the baby's breaths become a little steadier, a little less ragged. You listen closely, attuned to every tremor in his fragile chest, every tiny gurgle of air. The mother's eyes lift to meet yours. In them, you see the flicker of relief beginning to kindle, a tiny flame battling the vast darkness of her fear. Her lips part as if to speak, but no words come, just a soft, shaking exhale. You nod, your own throat tight with unspoken comfort. You step away for a moment to fetch a small linen cloth. You dip it in a bowl of cool water, then wring it carefully. You press the damp cloth to the baby's forehead, your fingers moving with the tenderness of someone who has held too many fragile bodies, watched too many final breaths. The mother reaches out and grabs your wrist, her fingers cold and trembling. "Thank you," she whispers, her voice raw as if scraped from the inside of her ribs. You meet her gaze evenly. "They say many things," you reply softly, smoothing the cloth across the baby's brow. "But you know your child better than any priest or neighbor. You knew to come here." She presses her lips together and tears spill silently down her cheeks. You let her cry. You know the weight of tears, how they cleanse more than the body, how they carry out the hidden poisons of the heart. The room grows quieter, save for the gentle crackle of the hearth and the faint rhythmic breaths of the baby, now easing into a shallow sleep. You feel the tension in the mother's body begin to soften as she realizes her child's fever has begun to break. You turn back to your table, cleaning the small stone grinder and sorting the leftover herbs with careful fingers. Your mind drifts as you work, wandering through memories of nights much like this, of women arriving in secret, carrying stories in their shaken hands, of small lives saved and lost in the hush of your cottage. You remember the long, lonely hours afterward when you sat alone in the dark, listening to the echo of your own pulse in the silence. You remember wondering if each act of kindness would be the one to tip the balance, to draw the final accusation that would end everything. Yet here you are, once more offering warmth to a trembling mother, once more placing your faith in roots and leaves and the quiet resilience of the human spirit. As the baby sleeps, the mother carefully lays him on your woven mat near the hearth. She strokes his soft hair with shaking fingers, her own shoulders finally beginning to settle. You watch her in the flickering light, her face caught between exhaustion and wonder. After a while, she looks up at you again. "Will he live?" she asks, her voice as thin as a spider's thread. You nod slowly. He is strong. He needs rest and your voice to guide him home. Keep him close. Keep him warm. She leans forward and wraps her arms around you suddenly, her cheek pressed to your shoulder. You stiffen for a moment, unaccustomed to such raw, desperate gratitude. Then slowly you let your own arms rise to hold her, feeling her shudders ease against your chest. When she finally pulls away, she wipes her eyes and gathers her bundle, tucking the baby carefully against her body. She stands in the doorway for a long moment, her gaze heavy with something deeper than thanks, a recognition of your shared womanhood, your shared survival. She leaves without another word, her silhouette slipping into the morning fog like a shadow returning to the earth. You close the door softly, leaning your forehead against the wood. You draw in a slow, ragged breath, feeling the ache of fatigue settle into your bones like a familiar ache. You turn back to the hearth, staring at the small mat where the baby had lain. You imagine his tiny breaths, the soft warmth of his weight, the fragile promise of life continuing against all odds. The cat curls against your leg, its soft purr vibrating through your skin. You reach down and scoop it into your arms, pressing your cheek against its fur. In that moment, the world feels smaller and gentler, as if the sharp edges have softened for just a breath. You close your eyes and imagine the earth below your feet humming with hidden roots and buried seeds, all waiting to rise again when the time is right.
After the young mother leaves, the cottage settles into a hush, so complete it feels almost holy. You remain standing by the door, your forehead resting against the cool wood, your breath coming slow and deliberate, as if you are relearning the shape of your own lungs. Outside, the fog still clings to the village paths, softening the outlines of houses and fences, making the world look like a half-remembered dream. You hear a rooster crow somewhere far off, a thin, reedy sound that drifts over the damp morning air. You turn and look at your small, worn room. The mat where the baby slept still holds the shape of his tiny body, a fragile imprint of warmth and breath. Your herbs hang above, some drooping, some defiant, each a quiet witness to your life. You move toward the hearth, adding a few small sticks to the embers, coaxing them back to life. The flames catch slowly, a soft orange glow unfurling like a yawn after a long sleep. You sit beside it, pulling your blanket around your shoulders, and let the heat crawl into your bones. The cat stretches and climbs into your lap, curling into a tight ball of fur. You stroke its back absently, your fingers moving in slow, soothing circles. Its purr thrums through your palm, a gentle echo of a heart that still dares to trust. Your mind drifts to the girl with the straw doll, the one who tried to wave at you that morning. You wonder if she thinks of you as a witch, a healer, or something stranger that she has no words for yet. Children carry stories like seeds, planting them in places adults can't reach. You imagine her holding her doll tonight, whispering to it about the woman by the river, about the herbs that smell like rain, and the black cat with the wise eyes. You close your eyes and imagine the girl growing up, her hair dark and wild like yours once was, her hands strong from carrying buckets and pulling weeds. You hope quietly that she might remember you with a small warmth rather than fear. Your thoughts drift further, to all the women before you, those who dared to know too much, to care too deeply, to touch the mysteries of life and death with bare hands. You see them in your mind, moving through meadows under moonlight, whispering to each other in hidden corners, weaving strength into every breath. You feel them near now,
as if their spirits lean in close, pressing warm palms against your back. You whisper their names to the hearth flames, names you learned in secret, names that taste like iron and wild honey.
You rise again, moving to your small table. You reach for a sprig of rosemary, its sharp scent filling the air as you crush it gently between your fingers. You sprinkle a few leaves into the hearth, watching them curl and blacken, releasing a fragrant smoke that climbs and weaves into the rafters above. May you be safe, you whisper into the smoke. May you be strong. May you find your way back to the light. You don't know exactly who you're speaking to, the mother, the child, the girl with the doll, or perhaps to yourself. But the words feel right, solid and soft all at once, a small spell of protection that no priest could understand. As the smoke drifts, you turn to the chest again and pull out the tiny cloth doll your daughter once held. You sit with it in your lap, smoothing its worn fabric with tender fingers. You imagine her small voice singing to it, her giggles echoing through the cottage. For a moment, you let yourself imagine that she is here, curled at your feet, the cat batting at her toes, her bright eyes looking up at you for stories. You imagine telling her of the women who came before, of herbs that heal and words that soothe, of the quiet bravery in simply surviving each dawn. The warmth from the hearth seeps deeper into you now, softening the tight knots in your shoulders and the ache in your spine. You feel your eyelids grow heavy, the slow pull of rest finally coaxing you under its gentle current. You set the doll beside you on the mat and curl around it, the blanket wrapped tight. The cat shifts closer, its purrs fading into the steady rhythm of your breathing. Outside, the village hums and stirs, but in this small room there is only the hush of old stories, the smell of rosemary and smoke, and the fragile promise of one more morning to come.
When you wake, the light has shifted again. No longer the gray veil of dawn, but a softer, warmer glow that spills across the floor in gentle ribbons. You lie still for a moment, the blanket heavy over your shoulders, the cloth doll resting against your chest like a small heartbeat. The cat is sprawled at your feet, paws twitching in some private dream. Its gentle, steady presence feels like a quiet affirmation. You are still here. You sit up slowly, stretching your arms overhead. Your muscles protest, a deep ache that reminds you of every hour spent bent over pots and baskets, every night spent kneeling by the hearth, every long walk into the forest to gather leaves and roots under moonlight. You rise and move to the small basin by the window, dipping your hands into the cool water. You splash your face, feeling the shock of cold chase the last remnants of sleep from your mind. You catch your reflection in the water, your eyes darker, your cheeks hollow, a thin web of fine lines around your mouth. Yet, beneath all that, you still see a flicker of the young woman who once ran barefoot through the meadow, hair wild and heart full of untested dreams. You pat your face dry and glance outside. A few villagers move along the path. A woman carrying a basket of kindling, a boy chasing a stray chicken, an old man leaning on his stick. Their movements are hesitant, watchful, as though the earth itself might shift beneath them if they move too boldly.
You turn back to your herbs, reaching for a bundle of thyme. As you separate the tiny leaves, their sharp green scent fills the air. You remember gathering it last summer, your fingers sticky with its oils, the sun burning your shoulders while cicadas hummed their endless lullaby. You crumble some into a small clay pot, thinking of the midwife who may soon need it for another mother, another fever, another midnight knock at your door. You move with a quiet patience, the same rhythm your mother taught you long ago, slow, certain, listening to each sound as though the plants themselves might speak. You imagine them whispering in a language older than any prayer, each leaf holding a secret of survival passed down from root to root. Your thoughts drift to the young mother again. You wonder if she's holding her baby now, humming softly, feeling the small weight of his breathing against her chest. You imagine her tracing his tiny fingers, whispering hopes into the crown of his damp hair. You hope she tells him stories of gentle women and brave herbs, rather than curses and witches. You place the prepared thyme beside the hearth and glance at the small, empty bowls scattered around your work table. Each one is a tiny monument to someone's pain. A poultice for a bruised knee, a tea for a restless child, a salve for an aching joint. You run your fingers along their edges, feeling the grooves and nicks that mark each quiet offering. The door creaks slightly, and you pause, listening. No one knocks, but the breeze moves through the opening like a curious spirit. You step over and push it closed gently, peeking outside one last time. You see the girl with the straw doll again, standing just beyond your garden fence. She clutches her doll to her chest, her wide eyes fixed on your doorway. For a moment, neither of you moves. Then, very slowly, she raises her hand in a small wave. You feel your breath catching your throat. You raise your hand in return, fingers trembling ever so slightly. Her eyes widen and she smiles, a shy, hesitant curve of her lips, before she turns and dashes away, her dark hair flying behind her. You close the door softly, your heart beating a little faster, a warmth blooming in your chest despite the morning chill. You lean against the wood, pressing your palm to its rough surface, feeling that simple, silent exchange echo through your bones. Returning to the hearth, you tuck the doll carefully back into the chest, laying it atop your daughter's scrap of dress. You smooth the cloth, your fingers lingering as though saying a quiet goodbye for now. You settle into your small chair by the fire, the cat hopping up to curl in your lap once more. You stroke its back absently, staring into the gentle dance of flames. Outside, the village breathes and murmurs and stirs, the same as it always has. But here, inside your small, smoky room, you carry a private, stubborn kind of peace, a fragile, steady warmth stitched together from mint leaves, whispered prayers, shy waves, and small hands grasping for life. And for today, that is enough.
The fire crackles softly at your side, the warmth creeping up your arms and settling into the spaces between your ribs. You lean back in your chair, your head resting against the rough wooden wall, and let your eyes close for a moment. Outside, the sun has begun its slow climb across the sky,
its pale gold light slipping between the branches and spilling into your small cottage in gentle pools. You hear the distant bleat of a goat and the low murmur of a woman calling her child home. Life continues its quiet, stubborn march forward. The cat stirs in your lap, shifting its weight before settling again, its purr a low, steady vibration against your legs. You run your fingers along its spine, feeling the small knots of muscle and the soft rise and fall of its breathing. You marvel, as you always do, at the smallness of this creature's world, its contentment with warmth, food, and a soft hand. Your mind drifts to the forest on the edge of the village, where the moss grows thick and the ferns curl like sleeping fingers. You think of the hidden places beneath old oaks where violets bloom shyly, and the hush that falls when the wind slides through the pines. In your mind, you wander there freely, your bare feet sinking into the cool, damp earth, your fingers brushing the tender green tips of new leaves. You remember the first time you went into those woods alone. You were just a girl, your hair still tangled with bits of straw, your heart thudding with the thrill of being unseen. You gathered handfuls of wildflowers and clutched them to your chest like stolen treasure. When you returned, your mother scolded you softly, but her eyes betrayed a secret pride, as if she saw in you the same restless spirit that lived in her own bones. You think of her now, her voice echoing through the years like a soft chant. "Listen to the earth," she would say. "It always tells you what it needs if you are quiet enough to hear." A gust of wind rattles the shutters and you open your eyes. You look toward your table and see the small pile of sorted herbs waiting patiently. You rise, careful not to disturb the cat too suddenly. It hops down and stretches, blinking at you with slow, trusting eyes. At the table, you take up a bundle of lavender, its dusky purple bloom still fragrant despite the passing weeks. You tie it carefully with a thin strip of linen, your fingers nimble and sure. You hang it from a small nail above the hearth, letting it sway gently in the warm air. Its scent drifts down like a soft lullaby, curling around you. You move to the next bundle, rosemary, strong and sharp, a scent that wakes the senses. You remember using it in a poultice for an old man's aching joints, watching him shuffle away with slightly lighter steps. You think of him now, bent over his stick, perhaps still murmuring small thanks under his breath. As you work, you hear footsteps crunching in the lane outside, a slow, deliberate rhythm. You pause, your hands resting lightly on the herbs, and listen. The steps stop just beyond your door, and then there's a gentle knock. You wipe your hands on your apron and move to the door, opening it just enough to see. An older woman stands there, her face lined like a well-worn map, her eyes as gray as the morning fog. In her hands, she holds a small clay jar, its surface cracked and patched with resin. "I brought you honey," she says, her voice low and cautious as though the words might break between her teeth. "From my hives, it is the least I can offer." You blink, your throat tightening. You reach out and take the jar, feeling its warmth against your palms. The honey inside glows softly in the morning light, like captured sunlight. "Thank you," you say, your voice almost a whisper. She hesitates, shifting her weight from foot to foot. Her eyes flick past you into the dim room, to the hearth,
to the cat now perched on the chair, to the bundles of herbs hanging like small blessings above. "May I come in?" she asks finally. You step aside, and she crosses the threshold slowly, her gaze drinking in every detail. She moves to the hearth and lowers herself carefully onto the stool, setting her hands on her knees. You place the jar on the table, your fingers lingering on the smooth clay. You prepare 2 small cups and fill them with the last of the mint water, offering one to her. She takes it with both hands, her fingers trembling slightly, and breathes in the steam. For a long moment, neither of you speaks. You simply sit together, the warmth of the fire wrapping around your shoulders, the gentle scent of mint and lavender weaving between you like a secret thread. In this small, hushed space, you feel something shift, a tiny, cautious trust blooming between 2 women who have both weathered too many storms. You watch her sip, her eyes closing briefly as if savoring not just the warmth, but the act of being offered something gentle.
The older woman cradles the clay cup in her hands, her fingers tracing small circles along its rim. You watch her breathe in the steam again and again, as if each inhale is a small act of courage. She finally opens her eyes and meets yours, her gaze steady but fragile, like a frost-touched leaf still clinging to a branch. "I remember when you first came here," she says, her voice carrying the weight of too many winters. "You were just a girl, barely old enough to carry a basket alone. Your mother brought you to market, and you stood so close to her skirts, peeking at everyone like a curious sparrow. You feel your lips tug to a faint smile, the memory flickering to life at the edge of your mind. You see yourself small and shy, clutching a basket filled with early spring greens, the smell of crushed mint on your fingers. She had strong hands," the woman continues, her gaze drifting to the hearth. "I always thought she knew things the rest of us were too afraid to learn. She healed my husband once after he fell from the ladder. You remember that?" You nod slowly. You remember the man lying in his bed, sweat beading on his forehead, his breath ragged and shallow. You remember your mother's hands moving quickly, her voice calm as she mixed willow bark and yarrow, her eyes sharp and full of unspoken resolve. "She saved him," she says, her voice catching. "But yet, when she died, no one came to sit with you. We were afraid." The words hang heavy in the small room, thicker than the smoke curling from the hearth. You look down at your lap, your fingers curling into the rough fabric of your apron. The memory is a tender bruise that never fully faded. The hush that fell over the village, the way doors closed as you passed, the echoing loneliness of that first winter alone. "I watched you," she says, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I watched you carry on, day after day. I saw you gather herbs, tend to the sick, speak to the children who weren't afraid yet." She sets the cup down carefully on the table, her fingers trembling as they leave its warmth. "I wanted to come to you then, but I didn't." Her eyes fill with tears that glint in the soft light. "I'm sorry." You look at her, really look, and see not just the woman she is now, but the girl she must have been once. A girl taught to hush her questions, to swallow her fears, to bow her head when the church bells rang. You see her small acts of survival, her quiet griefs, stacked like firewood behind her ribs. You reach out and cover her hand with yours. The skin beneath your palm is thin and cool, the veins a delicate blue map of time. You squeeze gently, a silent reply that no words could ever carry fully. She looks down at your joined hands and lets out a long, shuddering breath. Then she lifts her gaze and offers you a small, wavering smile, the kind that feels like a fragile blossom daring to open in early spring. You still carry her in you, she says softly. Your mother. You nod, swallowing against the tightness in your throat. I try to, you whisper. The two of you sit in that hush for what feels like an entire season. The fire crackling softly beside you, the scent of lavender and rosemary weaving through the air like a quiet hymn. Outside, you hear the distant laughter of children, the thud of a cartwheel over a stone, the faint bleating of goats calling for their midday feed. The world carries on beyond your door, unaware of the small miracle unfolding within. Two women reaching across the vast thorny distance of fear and regret. Eventually, the older woman stands, her movements slow and careful. She wraps her shawl tighter around her shoulders and looks around your small room one last time, her gaze lingering on the herbs, the hearth, the small bowl of honey on the table. May I come again? She asks, her voice hesitant but hopeful. You nod, your lips curling into a gentle, genuine smile. Yes, you say softly. Whenever you wish. She exhales and her shoulders drop as if a great weight has slipped free. She steps to the door and opens it, pausing in the light before turning back. Thank you, she whispers, her eyes shining. Then she steps into the lane, disappearing into the bright, trembling noon. You close the door slowly and turn back to the room, the warmth of her visit lingering like sunlight on your skin. You move to the table and pick up the honey jar, running your thumb over its cracked surface. You think of the sweetness inside, thick and golden, patient and enduring. You smile to yourself, imagining the taste, the warmth spreading through your chest like a small secret fire.
You stand in the quiet of your small cottage, the honey jar still warm in your hands. You set it carefully on the table, watching the light play across its golden depths. For a moment, it feels as if you are holding a small sun, something bright and alive that pulses gently beneath your fingers. The cat stretches and hops down from the chair, winding its way around your ankles. You reach down to scratch its chin, feeling the steady hum of its purr move up into your own chest. You close your eyes and let that vibration sink into you, reminding you of the small, everyday magics that have always been yours. Outside, the day is shifting into afternoon. The sunlight softens, turning the world into a patchwork of golden shadow. You hear a distant clatter of wooden pails, the gentle hum of bees drifting from hidden blossoms, the far-off laughter of children echoing like a song carried on the wind.
You walk to the hearth and crouch down, adding another piece of wood to the glowing coals. Sparks dance upward, tiny points of orange light that vanish as quickly as they appear. You watch them for a moment, thinking of all the stories you've carried. Yours, your mother's, the old woman's, the midwives', even the silent stories whispered by herbs and river reeds. You stand and stretch, your back arching, your arms reaching toward the low ceiling beams. You feel your muscles pull and release, the satisfying ache of a body that has carried you through so many storms. You lower your arms and breathe deeply, tasting the air, rosemary smoke, mint tea, and the soft sweetness of honey waiting patiently on the table. You glance at the window and see a young boy dart past, a sprig of something green clutched in his hand. He pauses at the corner of your garden, glancing over his shoulder as if to see if he's been followed. When he sees you watching, he freezes, eyes wide. You raise your hand in a small wave, your fingers soft and open. Slowly, hesitantly, he mirrors the gesture before darting off again, his feet kicking up small puffs of dust. You smile to yourself, a gentle warmth blooming in your chest.
You return to the table and take the honey jar in your hands once more. You open it carefully, dipping a small wooden spoon inside. The honey clings to the spoon in a thick golden ribbon. You lift it to your lips, tasting its rich, sun-soaked sweetness. It coats your tongue and slides down your throat like a blessing, leaving warmth that spreads all the way to your fingertips. As you set the spoon down, you feel a sudden wave of quiet gratitude wash over you. Gratitude not just for survival, but for all the small invisible threads that have held you together. The warmth of the hearth, the shy wave of a child, the softness of a cat's fur, the echo of your mother's voice in the dark. You look around your small home, the herbs hanging like guardians from the beams, the worn wooden bowls, the woven mat by the fire, the small chest holding scraps of your past. Everything here carries your breath, your sorrow, your quiet, stubborn joy. You move to the chest one last time and open it gently. You place the small doll back inside, arranging it beside your daughter's dress scrap. You rest your hand on them for a moment, closing your eyes, feeling a soft pulse of connection, as if all the years between you and her have folded into this one still point. When you rise, you feel lighter, not because the weight is gone, but because you have learned how to carry it differently. You step back to the hearth, the cat circling at your feet, and sit in your small chair. You watch the fire's gentle glow, listening to the soft music of the crackling wood. The day outside moves on, slow and steady, the village breathing in its own cautious rhythm. But here, inside this small smoky room, you hold a world of your own making. A world of tea and honey, of whispered songs and secret knowledge, of tenderness that refuses to be drowned or burned away. You lean back and let your eyes drift shut, the cat curling into your lap. You let your mind wander to fields blooming with violets, to moonlit clearings where mint breathes under the stars, to rivers that carry away sorrow and return with cool blessings. In the gentle hush of this moment, you think of all the women to come, The ones who will gather herbs, sing to their children, mend wounds in the dark, and stand quietly against the roaring fear of the world. You send them a silent blessing across the years. May you be strong. May you be tender. May you always find your way home. You draw in one long, slow breath, letting it fill every corner of your chest, and then release it softly into the quiet. Good night. Sleep gently with your heart full of small, radiant lights.